Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very festive evening here at the Mark Twain House and Museum. We are so tickled tonight to have two wonderful people talking about wonderful books. Of course, Debbie Macomber is here, and she's going to be in conversation with our dear friend, Jacques Lamarre. And I will be introducing both of them in greater detail in just a moment. I'm Jennifer LaRue. I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the Mark Twain House and Museum. And it's just been a real privilege and an honor to be able to host these programs throughout this difficult time and to share these wonderful evenings with so many people from all over the world. So welcome to all of you who are here from many different places. In fact, one of the things I'd encourage you to do, some of you already have started, say hi over there in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen and let us know where you are from. And then say hi back to everybody else. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before I hand the discussion over to Jacques and Debbie. I just mentioned the chat. Please continue to chat as you've already begun to do throughout the program. That makes it a little more fun. And I always like to say that's actually one of the benefits of the virtual programs. You can't do that live and in the auditorium. So that's a kind of benefit. You can chat away without getting your hand slapped or getting glared at by your neighbors. However, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the program. If you have a question for Debbie or for Jacques for that matter, please take a moment to go to the bottom of your screen where you see the Ask a Question tab and put your question up there. And if you go there and find that somebody else has already posed your question, you can just click on it to upvote it, and that moves it to the top of the pile. So please, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and remember to put them over there. Otherwise, they're not likely to get asked. I'm going to draw your attention to another feature on the bottom of the screen. There's a long green button underneath our faces that says your support is vital to the Mark Twain House and Museum. Thank you, Jacques, for your help. That's always been true, but never more true than it is right now. We, like so many other institutions, have suffered from lack of the activities that we generally put on. We've kept the virtual programs going, but we are a nonprofit private organization. We're not state or federally funded, and our main source of revenue actually is our house tour, which we've had to suspend a couple times, including now during this COVID crisis. So the revenue that we are able to generate through these programs is vitally important to us. And the registration fee is wonderful. Thank you so much for people who have helped us out that way. If you are able, I know not everybody is, to spare a little bit by clicking that donate button and sharing with us whatever amount you're able. Please know that on behalf of the staff and trustees of the museum, it is deeply appreciated and will be well used. So thank you to all of you who are able to do that for us. The Mark My Words series, of which this evening's program is a part, is generously sponsored by the Wish You Well Foundation, and our media sponsor is Connecticut Public, WNPR. So thank you to them for their help and support throughout the years. So I'm going to introduce our guests now. I talked long enough. Jacques Lamarre is an old and dear friend, and by old I don't mean he's old, I just mean he's been a longtime friend of the Mark Twain House and Museum. Jacques was actually the director of marketing and ran the public programs before I came to the Mark Twain House, and he really launched our public programs, so we owe him a great debt of gratitude for that. And he has stuck with us. He now works with us as a consultant with his the firm he works with, Buzz Engine, and they've been great partners in bringing these these programs to life. So thank you for that, Jacques. But Jacques has another life. He is a playwright himself, and very well celebrated playwright. And he's known here in Hartford, particularly for being one of the co-writers of the fabulous Christmas on the Rocks, which is too bad for everybody outside of Hartford who can't take part in that joyous, hilarious occasion every Christmas season.
They can this year, though, thanks to the wonders of virtual entertainment. The entire play has been filmed this year. So if you go to TheaterWorksHartford.org, you can see it.
So do you like how I set that up, Jacques?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So Debbie Macomber is a new friend of the Mark Twain House and Museum, and we're so delighted to have her in our circle of writers now. You all know who she is. She's the author of A Walk Along the Beach, Window on the Bay, Cottage by the Sea, Any Dream Will Do, If Not for You, and the Rose Harbor Inn series. She's known as a leading voice in women's fiction, of course. 13 of her novels have reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller lists, and 5 of her beloved Christmas novels have been hit movies on the Hallmark Channel, including Mrs. Miracle and Mr. Miracle. Hallmark Channel also produced the original series Debbie Macomber's Cedar Cove, which is based on her Cedar Cove books. She's also the author of the cookbook Debbie Macomber's Table, which we are offering for sale tonight through our Mark Twain store. There's a link in the chat to purchase that. There are more than 200 million copies of her books in print worldwide, and now she's added another to that list, Jingle All the Way, which again we can offer for sale through the museum store, and check the link in the chat for that as well. So we are thrilled to welcome to the Mark Twain House and Museum, Debbie Macomber. Thank you.
And actually, I want to kind of correct the record really quickly. Debbie, although didn't come to the Twain House, she was actually part of one of our author events that we did many years ago. At Mohegan Sun, it was the Mark Twain House and Museum, the Big Book Getaway. And so you have done something with us before. So I should say welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
And I know that you've got a ton of fans here who are very excited to hear you speak. But I wanted to actually start with something kind of Mark Twain-ish. You and I talked about this. And I swear it will turn around and go back to Debbie. But because we promised everyone a little bit of a Christmas party here, I wanted to share a letter that Mark Twain wrote as Santa Claus to his daughters, and in response to their Christmas wish list. And so I'm gonna read this, and then we're gonna be off and running and jingle all the way on our conversation. Okay, Debbie?
Sure. Sounds good to me.
So Mark Twain's oldest daughter's name was Susie. So, my dear Susie Clemens, I have received and read all the letters which you and your little sister have written me. I can read your and your baby sister's jagged and fantastic marks without any trouble at all. But I had trouble with those letters which you dictated through your mother and the nurses, for I am a foreigner and cannot read English writing well. You will find that I made no mistakes about the things which you and the baby ordered in your own letters. I went down your chimney at midnight when you were asleep and delivered them all by myself and kissed both of you too. But there were 1 or 2 small orders which I could not fill because we ran out of stock. There was a word or 2 in your mama's letter which I took to be a trunk full of doll's clothes. Is that it? I will call at your kitchen door about 9 o'clock this morning to inquire. But I must not see anybody, and I must not speak to anybody but you. When the kitchen doorbell rings, George, who's the family's butler, I'm sure we all have butlers, George, the family's butler, must be blindfolded and sent to the door. You must tell George he must walk on tiptoe and not speak. Then you must go up to the nursery and stand on a chair or the nurse's bed and put your ear to the speaking tube that leads down to the kitchen. And when I whistle through it, you must speak in the tube and say, "Welcome, Santa Claus." Then I will ask whether it was a trunk you ordered or not. If you say it was, I shall ask you what color you want the trunk to be. And then you must tell me every single thing in detail you want the trunk to contain. And then when I say goodbye and a Merry Christmas to my little Susie Clemens, you must say, "Goodbye, good old Santa Claus. I thank you very much." And then you must go down into the library and make George close all the doors that open into the main hall, and everybody must keep still for a little while. I'll go to the moon and get those things, and in a few minutes I will come down the chimney that belongs to the fireplace that is in the hall. If it is a trunk you want, because I couldn't get such a thing as a trunk down the nursery chimney, you know, if I should leave any snow in the hall, you must tell George to sweep it into the fireplace, for I haven't time to do such things. George must not use a broom, but a rag. else he will die someday. I don't know why he wrote that's horrible. If my boot should leave a stain on the marble, George must not wholly stone it away. Leave it there always in memory of my visit, and whenever you look at it or show it to anybody, you must let it remind you to be a good little girl. Whenever you are naughty and someone points to that mark which your good old Santa Claus's boot made on the marble, what will you say, little sweetheart? Goodbye for a few minutes till I come down to the world and ring the kitchen doorbell. Your loving Santa Claus, whom people sometimes call the Man in the Moon. So thank you for putting up with a Mark Twain moment. But you can see that Christmas meant a lot to the Clemenses, and as it clearly means a lot to you, Debbie. So I want to talk about your Susie Clemens moment and what some of your earliest Christmas memories are.
I think probably the one that stands out of my mind is, as a kid growing up, we would always go to midnight mass, and I really was at midnight. And we would then go to my aunts and uncles' places, usually my Aunt Gertie's house, and watch them open their gifts. And then we would go home and have a very early breakfast and go to bed and sleep in really late and then open our gifts the next morning. That was just one of my very favorite memories of growing up, of going to midnight mass. And later on, as life changes, our own kids, we would go, they discontinued the midnight mass. It was usually about 7 or 8 o'clock. The kids would come in their pajamas and they would go to bed as soon as they got home.
Oh, fun. So how do you feel when you hear that or actually, let me ask you this. What are some of your favorite Christmas traditions?
Well, with the when the kids were growing up, it was, and this has got carried over to the grandkids too. In fact, 2 of the grandkids were here yesterday, and we were making cookies and candy and baking, and we've always done that. We used to, the kids and I would make tree ornaments too, and string popcorn and do that. But the grandkids, I have many traditions with them, especially when they were little. The giving tree, they would go and take a name of a child that was around their age, and then I would give them money and they would shop for that child. And I was so pleased and impressed with how thoughtful they were with each gift they purchased. The first weekend of December, we would get together I would get together with the grandkids, and we would make things together to give to other people. And it was just, a wonderful time. I think really the best gift that I can give my children or grandchildren is time with them.
Agree. Now, just for people who may not know, how many children do you have?
4 and 11 grandchildren.
And 11 grandchildren. And what's the age range for the grandchildren at this point?
Oh my goodness, it's quite right. 24 to 3.
To 3. Oh, that's quite a range.
It is.
And it must be difficult this year, but I'll talk with you a little bit about that situation later. I mean, the situation we're all aware of, but talk about how it's impacting you and Christmas this year. So having talked about Christmas traditions, and where did you grow up, by the way?
I grew up in a little town called Yakima, which is right in the center of Washington State. And great wine country now.
What's that?
Great wine country.
Oh, I thought you said wild country. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
I guess the wine leads to the wild, right?
Yeah, it used to be apple country. Now it's all wine.
Oh, interesting. Is it near where any of the fires occurred, or?
There's always fires in Washington State, but yes, it was.
Oh, well, I hope everyone's okay.
Yeah.
So, having talked about Christmas traditions, how do you feel knowing that your books have become a Christmas tradition?
Oh, that's really fun. And it all started with something that happened with my parents. They had come over. It was the very first of one of my very first Christmas books, called Can This Be Christmas? And my parents were here for Christmas, and the day after Christmas, it started to snow, and my dad said, "We're out of here." And so they loaded up the car. They're going to Yakima, but they have to go over a mountain pass, and they closed the pass. And it was a horrible snowstorm. They were stuck with hundreds of people in this little town called North Bend. And we couldn't get to them. They couldn't get back to us. And both of them were not in great health. And I was very concerned. And so we had lost our electricity, but when it came on, the news was just full of all these people in North Bend. And they scanned the crowds. And here's my mom leading the singing. And my dad's playing cards. And they made friends. And then they were there 3 days. And they made friends that they had the rest of their lives. And so I wrote a book about people stuck together on Can This Be Christmas?
And so, and when was that? Do you remember?
1998.
1998. And so, did Christmas stories become pretty immediately, something that you then started generating, or did you kind of come back to it later?
No, it was. I've always been a Christmas person. When the kids, well, except for this year, we have 6 Christmas trees at our house.
Oh my goodness!
I know, it's one for every family, and so they know when the grandkids would come, they would know which tree was theirs and which gifts were theirs. And then I would have one, of course, for Wayne and I, and then I had one in my yarn room, decorated with yarn.
I just read that you had a yarn store, by the way. I know you don't have it anymore, but it was so interesting. Reading your bio, it's like, I don't know how you have time.
Every day, every single day I knit.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. What are you working on now for knitting?
Oh, I'm knitting all the grandsons' hats.
Oh my, my grandmother's passed away, and if you're looking to take on any additional grandchildren, I will apply, because I have a feeling that you are like the best grandmother ever.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd like to think so.
I think you've put out over 24 Christmas stories now, Christmas books. Is that about correct?
Yep.
So has that been pretty much one a year? One a year,
every year. And it's so interesting because that very first book that I wrote, Can This Be Christmas, was 100 pages. And the feedback I got from the readers, and I've always, always, always listened to my readers, is loved you, loved the story, wanted more. And I was contracted for 3 Christmas books at that time. And the publisher didn't pay me a penny more, but I doubled and a half the words.
Oh, wow.
And after listening, I mean, the readers have changed the course of my career about 3 or 4 different times. And, they've never steered me wrong. And the sales of the Christmas books have escalated every single year since I did that.
Oh, that's amazing. I love the thought that your readers can count on this every year. And that's become a tradition that, aside from the stories that you've already written and that you can cherish year round, that there's something to look forward to at Christmas time with a new Debbie Macomber novel. So that's very cool that you've created a tradition. So in your Christmas books, family and faith play a very large part in the stories. And I know that you mentioned going to midnight mass, but do you want to talk a little bit about how family and faith have shaped you in your books? Well, that's just it. Family and faith are just important to me, so it's going to be a natural outpouring of books. And I think it's important, too, that Christmas is all about family. It's what unites us. And when my readers, I especially try to do, not always, but something a little comical, a little amusing in the Christmas stories, because so many people just get stressed out at that time of year. And I just wanted my readers to relax with that comfortable feeling, with a winsome story that they can just sink into and just put all their worries aside and enjoy the holidays. I was wondering, looking at the roughly 5,000 books that you've written over your career, and was wondering, is there ever an unhappy ending in one of your books? No, never. There may be tragedies that happen in the story itself, but there's always a happy ending. I wish I could think of a word to explain this, Jacques. But there is a connection between the author and the reader. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I laugh, the reader will laugh. If I cry, they will cry. If I put my heart on the page, it links with theirs.
And that has always been my feeling when I write a book. You know, it's an emotional investment that the reader is making. I do not want to leave them disappointed at the end and saying, I read this whole book and she dies, you know? Are they all together? You know, that's just not what I want to do.
You know, you just described the books by half the authors we present. I'm glad you're at the other end of the spectrum. Twain didn't always go in for a happy ending, so I'm glad that you feel you need to bring that to your readership. It's I imagine very reassuring to them that they know when they're picking up one of your books that they're going to have, in the best sense of the word, a loving experience.
Long before I was published, I had this picture in my mind of somebody, I don't know why, it was a grocery store or a store, you know, that kind of store where you would have a cart. And they would go past this image in my mind. They would go past the book section and they would see one of my books and they just go, oh, a Debbie book. And they would just grab it and hold it. Yeah. And that was a picture I held in my mind long before I was published.
Yeah, well, you know, and I think, you know, as a playwright, you know, I think oftentimes it's like, oh, I've got to write something serious or what have you. But I know that I gravitate towards writing things that are funny and have a little heart to them so that people will remember it as a joyous experience, you know, being in the theater.
Well, I wrote down the link to your play. I'm going to go watch it.
Oh, good. I'll ask Jennifer to put the link in the chat too, so we can share it and everyone can spend lots of money on tickets. So food, you know, we were talking about when we were doing our little rehearsal the other day, you're having the grandkids over for candy and cookies, and I became insanely jealous. But food and Starbucks peppermint lattes and a cup of hot tea seem to figure into your Christmas storytelling a bit. So what foods and drinks say Christmas to you?
Well, definitely the Christmas candies. And there was a recipe handed down from my grandmother to my mother that I haven't done it in quite a while because it's quite involved, but it's date candies and you dip them in chocolate. And so that always was Christmas to me. And my mother was all four of my grandparents immigrated from Ukraine.
Oh,
and
wow.
The traditions there are very similar to the foods that are in Turkey, actually. And there was this rice dish with raisins. It's like a rice stuffing, except it has cinnamon and apple in it. That is Thanksgiving and Christmas all over for me. So it's the traditions that are passed down from one generation to the next. You know, those date candies, that rice dish, the gingerbread cookies. All of those things are just things that have come from one generation to the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the things that we have a thing that's called holiday pudding that my mom makes, which is my grandmother's recipe on my father's side, and it's not actually called holiday pudding, but we call it that because that's the only time we ever saw it. And it was like, you know, one of those steamed molasses and raisins
good.
with suet in it, so it's super moist and horrible for you. So, you know, I know that you've been called, and I don't know if this is I don't think this is self-proclaimed, but the Queen of Christmas Stories. And so how do you find a fresh idea every year for a new Christmas story?
You know, that is really the gift God gave me, being a storyteller, and I've never lacked for ideas, never. So I'm, you know, that's just the gift God gave me.
And so, you know, is it, you know, you're probably in a rhythm now at this point with your publishing, and especially with everything that you have to juggle in your life. So when do you start to turn your attention to the Christmas book? Like, have you already written your 2022 or 2021 Christmas book?
I have. It's called Dear Santa. And the idea came from a 12-year-old girl. Her grandma, who's Wayne's cousin, she told her grandma, I want to be a writer. And he says, well, my cousin's wife is a writer. So they brought her to meet me. And so I'm talking to her and I said, well, when did you know you wanted to be a writer? And she stopped and she thought about it. And she said, I think I knew when I started writing Santa.
Ah.
So I was really, you know, I love the idea that Susie Clemens had written Santa herself. Yeah. So somebody that had written Christmas letters as a child and what happens to her as an adult when she decides she needs to write them again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people ask me where I get my ideas for my plays, and oftentimes I just can't tell them. They just happen.
Yeah.
You know? It's that weird, you know, I mean, sometimes you have that specific inspiration like you did with this story, but I mean, that was just the starting point. You had to come up with the whole narrative.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about where Jingle All the Way came from. And again, to remind everyone that this is the 2020 Christmas story, Jingle All the Way. Where did, you know, give us a little bit of the background on how this story started.
Well, Wayne and I have always enjoyed cruises, and we've taken cruises to actually the Amazon and Antarctica. Well, he likes me to go places where I can't use a credit card. But we decided to take a National Geographic cruise up the Columbia River. Now, we live in Washington State, but the geological history of the state is just really unique and wonderful. And so we thought it would be fun. Well, this was not a luxury cruise. This is like camp for adults. I mean, there was no phone, there was no TV, there was no internet, there was no lock on the door even. I mean, you didn't have a key to get into your room. There was revelry, you know, until 7 a.m. And it was wonderful. We made lots of friends. So my idea was of somebody that is thinking of taking a luxury cruise that ends up on a ship going up the Amazon when they think they're going to be, you know, in Buenos Aires on the beach, you know. So actually, I thought the book should have been titled Jungle All the Way.
I have to say, it was such, because the book cover and the title don't give anything away in terms of the content of the book. I mean, there's not a python to be seen on the cover. And so I was really pleasantly surprised when a very large portion takes place, you know, on this Amazon cruise. And of course we're going to have adventure and misadventure and romance, but it was a delightful surprise. And I think the setup is very funny of how she ends up on the cruise. I don't know if you want to talk about that. I am so careful about spoilers, but.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's just that the assistant she doesn't get along with books the cruise for her because she knows she's going to get fired. And so she makes sure it's a miserable cruise for her. And if, all the things that can happen to somebody that's a business executive in a really unfamiliar environment.
So my next question was what kind of research you did, but clearly you went on some of these cruises. Did you have, I'm assuming you did not have some of the experiences that Everly has in the book. Well, actually I did. And I will tell one story. This did not happen to me. It happened to some friends we made on the cruise. And one of the excursions was to go piranha fishing. And it was catch and release. And my friend actually caught 3 piranha. And they're actually very good eating, by the way. That was something I learned from your book.
Yeah. So they're in this zodiac and they go under this foliage and a big spider comes down into the zodiac. And one of the men screamed and jumped overboard.
Into the piranha-infested water.
Into the piranha-infested water.
That is truly out of the frying pan.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I did not stop and think for a minute, other than like the moments in the farmhouse where they're making Christmas cookies or having cocoa or whatever. I'm like thinking, oh, this is completely different than Debbie's life. And now I realize it's more autobiographical than I would have guessed.
Yes. Use every experience I have, trust me.
Oh, that's so wild. So did you talk to anyone who became like the basis of Asher after Asher being the Amazon tour guide?
Actually, that National Geographic cruise, I got 2 book ideas from that, and Asher became the hero in A Walk Along the Beach. So it was the National Geographic photographer actually was. And so I just kind of you have all these experts on board these ships when these National Geographic cruises, and so I used both of them. I used them all.
Got it. A big thing now with a lot of storytelling and in terms of movies or TV or what have you are Easter eggs. Do you feel like you have, Easter eggs between novels? I know I read in preparation for this Mrs. Miracle Christmas and your 3 angels from another series.
Yes.
Come bombing in on that story. Do you like to kind of put little things in for your readers to, your faithful readers to pick up? Or
I don't know that I do.
That's an okay answer. But it was interesting to me that you had kind of these crossover stories with Mrs. Miracle. So what do you, obviously, it's the heart of Jingle All the Way is a romance, and you started your writing in the romance genre. So what do you think makes Christmas a romantic time of year?
I just think that our hearts are so much more open at Christmas time that, it's the time of the year when when money comes to most charities. It's just like we're far more aware of the world around us, I think, and those we love, and the powerful connection with family. So I think that all attributes to it.
Got it. So obviously we're going through a very unusual Christmas this year. And
Thanksgiving.
And Thanksgiving. What did you do for Thanksgiving? Was it just you and your husband?
Well, I actually ended up cooking 3 meals because the state required 6 people or less. So the adult grandchildren came the Sunday before, and then on Wednesday our son Ted came, and then on Thanksgiving Day our daughter Adele came.
Oh, got it. Well, a lot of us. What was that?
A lot of work.
A lot of work, yeah. But for a number of folks who may be watching, they may be spending Christmas by themselves this year, or unable to travel the way they normally would, or it could be a couple who aren't able to be with their kids or grandkids. So, do you have any Christmas in quarantine tips for us?
Well, Zoom has become a lifesaver for so many families. It's just good to get together and say hello and keep connected.
So are you offering to Zoom anyone who's lonely this Christmas, Debbie?
Not really.
I thought I would try. Sorry, folks. And just a reminder, unless you're asking Debbie to Zoom with you on Christmas, you can put a question in the Ask a Question feature at the bottom. And I see Debbie might be checking out the chat right now.
Looking over here, reading the little notes.
Yeah. Patricia likes Ukrainian Christmas cookies. So, we had Michael Connelly, the thriller writer, recently, and his most recent book is the first book that I've read that features the pandemic as a plot point. Do you see this possibly making its way into a novel or no?
Well, I've talked about this with other writers. It's quite a controversial thing. First of all, it dates the book.
Yep.
So that you kind of don't want to do that when you're writing a book. But I think it's something we all want to forget.
Yeah.
We want to move forward. And so I haven't. I mean, I did write a short story that involved the virus, but not a book. I think that people just want to move on.
Yes, agreed.
It'll probably be 20 years from now, there'll be lots of stories. Just like the World War II is so popular right now.
Yeah. Well, and it's sort of like, something like 9/11. It just becomes part of our national consciousness, and you can't really ignore it, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the focus of your story, So, I want to get into your writing career a little bit more, stepping away from Christmas in general. But so, like Mark Twain, you seem to have gotten a little bit of a comparatively late start on your writing career. So, I want to hear about how you got your start. Maybe some of your readers know this story, and when you thought this could be a career.
Well, I didn't start. Well, first of all, I married as a teenager, and so the 4 kids were born right away. Four kids in 5 years, by the way.
Wow. My mom did 10 and 15 years.
Oh my goodness. So, but it was always something I dreamed about doing. The best way I can think to describe it is that when I would think about being a writer, my heart would just pound with joy. There would be this happy anticipation that would come over me. But I have a terrible background because I'm dyslexic, but they didn't know what that meant when I was growing up. And usually it's boys who are dyslexic, but I didn't learn to read until I was in the 5th grade. And the teachers told my mom, Debbie's a nice little girl, but she's never going to do well in school. And I didn't. So, I felt lucky to have graduated from high school. So the thought of being a writer, and to this day, I'm a creative speller. That's just part of being dyslexic. And so it was very comfortable for me to push that dream into the future. And then there was a death in our family. I grew up in that baby boom era of World War II, and there were 6 of us that were born within like 14 months of each other. And we were very close growing up. We did everything together. We lived in the same neighborhoods, went to the same school, church. We took our vacations together. We were a very close-knit family. And David, my cousin, got leukemia. And I was the only one living here in Seattle, the only cousin. And he was brought over to the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. And the first time I went to see him, it's connected. The center is connected to Swedish Hospital. I got lost in Swedish and I couldn't find my way, and stopped a doctor and asked him, how do I get from here to there? And he said, it's so easy. You just go down the hallway, take the first right, and walk through the door marked absolutely no admittance. And, that was the door I had to walk through. And after David died, I really felt like God was saying, if you have a dream, you can't put it off. You need to do it now. So it was with a rented typewriter on the kitchen table that I moved at mealtimes, and that was how I started. Yes.
Oh, wow. Fun fact, Mark Twain was the first author to write a novel on a typewriter.
I was probably the last one.
Now, this does obviously beg a question in terms of, do you just plow ahead with the dyslexia when you're writing, or does it take you longer as a result, or what's the?
There are certain things, words that I switch in my mind. Such and just are transferable in my mind. I don't know why. And other words are like that. And sometimes I see the words in my mind, but they don't make it on the page. So half of the sentence will be gone.
Okay.
And, that kind of thing. So everything I write has to be proofread several times.
And is there an editor or someone that you want to give a shout out to for their heroic work?
Well, my assistant Shauna for one, and then my daughter Adele. Shauna reads for the mistakes I make or the words I misuse, and Adele reads for content.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for giving them the credit they deserve. Now, Mark Twain finds himself easily distracted when he tries to write. In his home in Hartford, he moved into various different places, but with 3 girls and a multiplicity of servants and a number of guests coming and various animals. He loved cats, gave his cats insane names, but he found himself very distractible when he wrote. So he went up to the 3rd floor of his house and into his billiard room, closed the door, pushed a table in the corner, and that's where he sat when he wrote. So where do you write, and what are the ideal conditions for you for writing?
Well, when I first started writing, like I said, it was at the kitchen table. It was the center of activity. And so I learned to write around the kids. I mean, I was around noise all the time. When Dale, our youngest, was a senior in high school, I rented my first office. Not because I wanted to have the privacy, but because I wanted to make work, work, and home, home. Mm-hmm. And so I had my office, and right now I have an office and a team of about 8 people that work with me for a variety, because I have very different aspects of my career, including the magazine, Welcome Home. And my door's open. I mean, I don't even have a door. I ride up a stairwell and a turret. And so, but since the pandemic, I've been writing at home, which is where I started originally. And it's been very nice. I really enjoy it. And I've gotten quite used to being at home with Wayne during the day. I like it a lot. I never go back to the office.
I know. I thought I would never enjoy working at home, and I do, but I feel like my writing has suffered during the quarantine. I don't know if, do you maintain a kind of schedule in terms, like I know with Stuart Woods, the thriller writer, we did a conversation with him, and he writes an hour a day. That's it. But it is, wherever he is, when that alarm goes off, he's done for the day. And then the next day he picks it up, writes for another hour. So what's your schedule time-wise? Or is it just like between 9 and 5 I write and I get all my other stuff for work done?
Well, I'm sort of like semi-retiring. So I write in the mornings, and then in the afternoons I'm free. But it doesn't always work out. But how I've been doing it for years and years and years is very simple. I take a calendar page when I start a book, and decide how many pages I need to write that day to make the deadline. I'm very generous with myself. I don't make a lot of pages. And then I don't go home or I don't stop until those pages are written. Sometimes I get a little bit behind, maybe a page or two, but almost always I get ahead.
And you don't write longhand. You write on computer?
Yeah.
Yeah. David Baldacci still writes all his books longhand, which I find absolutely stunning.
Oh my goodness, Susan Weeks does too. If you know Susan.
No, I'm gonna have to look her up.
She has a magic blue pen. She writes all her books with her magic blue pen.
Huh. I'm gonna write that down. Susan Weeks. All right. So I think we kind of jumped my next question and my next question. So let's get to one of the fun things about your books, which is that a number of them have been adapted into Hallmark films, and as well as the Cedar Cove series. And so how involved are you in that process? Or do they here's the check, thanks for the book, and we're going to take it from here?
Well, sort of, but they do involve me, and it was a wonderful experience working with them. And I got to be on the set of. My kids were in several of the movies. They didn't have any speaking parts. I had a speaking part. I think I said, "Yes, Judge. Thank you, Judge." I think that was it. I just got a royalty check for $400. I was so excited. I'm a Springfield now. So. Yeah, so I had script approval, although usually by the time I got the script, it was being filmed. So. And
I imagine they're pretty faithful to the books. Is that?
Well, you work with what is known as a story. Well, just a minute. I can't think of the word right now. But they plan the series for the season, and you work with them, and they have an arc, so it doesn't always follow the books exactly. But that's all right.
That's all right. Well, it's always kind of interesting when something new comes out of your work too, I'm sure, and seeing these things come to life. Is there a particular, are you like a parent where you don't want to say one is a particular favorite, or is there a movie that you're particularly happy about?
Oh, I love Mrs. Miracle. Doris Roberts was the perfect choice for that.
It's so funny because I read the Mrs. Miracle Christmas, and then I knew that one had been made into a movie, and I looked at And I would not have picked her. But you know, the thing is, I get the audiobook reader in my head.
Oh, yes.
And Doris doesn't sound a thing like like her. Is it always the same audiobook reader, by the way?
No, it's different ones. They let me choose every time.
Oh, good. Is there one that you particularly love?
Yeah. Her first name is Teresa, and I can't remember her last name right now. But I think she's going to be reading Jingle All the Way. I'm not sure.
And that one's already been released on audio, right?
Yes.
Yes. I read it the old-fashioned way, but I listened to Mrs. Miracle Christmas. Now let me see. Oh, we're doing pretty well on time here, but I want to make sure we answer questions. But before we do, I have a fun activity since we're on Hallmark movies. I found a Mad Libs for Hallmark Christmas movies. Jennifer, are you there? Let's see if she comes back. If not, I'll just do this myself.
Nope, I'm here. Do you want me to come back on screen?
Or if you want to just follow along, were you able to print out the Mad Libs form?
I was, and it's so festive.
It is so festive. We don't want to give anything away.
I'm sure nobody could read that in that.
I can see Debbie squinting. I can see she's trying to put the story in.
I just want you to know my daughter brought it up. It's Teresa Plummer who reads the Jingle All the Way.
Oh, great. Is your daughter like your version of Siri?
Yeah. Especially when I'm online like this.
All right. So I'm going to give you different parts of speech and whatnot, and then we're going to plug them into our Hallmark Christmas movie Mad Libs. And so whatever this is called will end up being called Debbie Macomber's, whatever we call this. So I need a verb, Debbie, ending in ing.
Running.
All right. A female 90s sitcom star.
Jennifer Aniston.
Oh, I hear you getting help off screen. All right, this one you should be able to do without assistance. Kitchen utensils.
Mixer.
A farm animal.
Sheep.
A body part.
Foot.
A place.
Home.
A number.
7.
A verb ending in ing.
Another one, huh? Leaping.
Okay. An animal.
Dog.
Articles of clothing.
Sweater.
A food.
Fudge.
Single article of clothing.
Shoe.
A country.
Ukraine.
A color.
Yellow.
A verb ending in ing.
Another one. Singing.
A former TV sitcom dad.
I was thinking Leave It to Beaver's dad. I can't remember his name now.
Ward Cleaver.
Ward Cleaver.
All right. A place.
Church.
A number.
3.
A drink.
Eggnog.
A chore.
Dishes.
I thought you were going to say this activity. An exclamation.
Ho ho. Oh.
Kitchen utensils.
Fork.
Forks. All right. And last, a verb, present tense.
Happy.
What was that?
Happy? Is that a good verb for you? Is that a verb?
No.
Okay, let's see.
More of an adjective, wouldn't you say, Jennifer?
I would say that's more of an adjective. A verb.
Yeah.
What was it? Verb present tense?
Yep.
I can't think of a single one.
Do you want to ask Siri?
Swimming.
Swimming. All right, so swims. Okay.
Oh,
So we are about to premiere,
oh dear,
for the first time ever, a new Hallmark Christmas movie. Debbie Macomber's. Take it away, Jennifer.
Debbie Macomber's Running for Christmas.
oh.
Our movie's beautiful leading lady, Holly, is portrayed by Jennifer Aniston. She is an up-and-coming executive at a Manhattan company that sells Christmas mixers. Shortly before the holiday, there's a crisis involving customers in the rural town of Sheepfoot. The company's boss chooses Holly instead of her workplace rival, Ivy, to solve the problem before Christmas Eve. She is elated to get this opportunity, but disappointed she must skip her vacation in home with her fiancé. She is a vice president at their company and has been engaged to Holly for 7 years. At first glance, he seems perfect for her, but Holly tells a workplace confidant that she has doubts about sleeping him because he hates Christmas, her favorite holiday. Duty-bound, our heroine rushes to the small town, arriving during the annual Christmas parade, which features Santa and his trusty red-nosed dog, Rudolph. In her haste to get to the town, however, Holly forgot to pack extra sweaters. What she's wearing is ruined when two parade spectators spill fudge on her as she bumps into a handsome man wearing the most festive shoe she's ever seen. Holly and the small town hunk, portrayed by an unknown actor from Ukraine, have undeniable romantic chemistry. She can't stop gazing into his yellow eyes.
Poor thing has jaundice, or what is it when you get hepatitis?
It's jaundice.
Right.
Monkey. Oh gosh. Also, he loves Christmas. Although tempted, she resists acting on her feelings because she is engaged. While disappointed, the hunk helps Holly solve the crisis, which is accomplished by singing to the parade Santa, who is also the mayor and is portrayed by Ward Cleaver. Together, they discover her fiancé has hatched a plot to seize control of the company. Heroine Holly phones him and discovers he's at a vacation resort in far-off church with office rival Ivy. Angered and hurt, she calls off the engagement. When he starts to argue, the resort's waitstaff accidentally drops 3 gallons of eggnog on the cad and his secret girlfriend. Now it's Christmas Eve, and at last our leading lady has new clothes. It's time for her to return to work in the big city, where she's getting a promotion. She will be the new vice president in charge of dishes. She bids farewell to her new small-town friends. Ho, 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 she says. This is harder than I expected. Then the small-town hunk asks her to stay and marry him. Perhaps they can start their own company selling forks to the locals. As snow begins to fall and Christmas church bells ring, she says yes and swims him on the lips.
Oh, dear.
Well done. Well done.
Oh,
Thank you. So there you have her 2021 novel already, a year in advance. Thank you, Debbie, for putting up with us. Since Jennifer's on the screen, we should have her ask questions to Debbie. The Ask a Question feature. It's not too late if you haven't asked your question yet to pop it in there.
Exactly. Some of these we've touched on already. So I'm going to hop down to a question from Eve Evans, who asks, what is your favorite Christmas dessert?
Oh, you're going to laugh. Fruitcake. I love fruitcake.
Those like homemade kind or the little rectangles that you buy in the grocery store?
No, homemade.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Cake recipe. That was Wayne's mom's.
Oh, all right. Christy Bathgate wants to know, what is your favorite Christmas story or novel that's not your own?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I really love to read Regency Christmas books, and some of my favorites have been Mary Bailow's Christmas novels of Regency periods.
You can see everybody's going to rush out now and get on Amazon and buy those.
Yeah.
So this is a good question that I don't think you really touched on too much. Lynn wants to know, how do you develop your characters, and are they based on people you know?
They aren't really based on people I know. What I do is I find the premise for a story or the idea for a story, and then I ask myself, what kind of person would get in this situation? So like this girl that's stuck, who would go on a vacation to Amazon and how would she get there? So I want to get a business executive so completely out of her element on this cruise. So then I just start developing the character and what her personality would be like. And that's how it usually goes.
That you make it sound so easy. Anybody who's ever tried to write something knows it's just not that easy, but it seems you make it look effortless. That's another writing style kind of question from Marge Jagler. I'm not sure I'm saying your last name correctly, Marge, but she wants to know about your writing process, which we talked about already. But do you outline your books before you begin writing? And when do you decide on the book title?
Oh, okay. So first of all, there are generally two kinds of writers in the world. There are the ones that are plotters, which I am. I plot the entire book before I ever write page one. And it's usually just, it's the skeleton of the book. And so I'll have like a paragraph or longer for a chapter. And then each day when I go to write, I'll just read what's there. And then I create the chapter around what I have plotted. Then there are the pantsers, and those are the people that just write by the seat of their pants. And both ways work. They just get an idea and they just run with it, and then they just kind of change things as they go along. Both work.
I'm a pantser. I didn't know that was an official title for what I do, but yeah. I sound like I'm one of Santa's untoward reindeers. I'm pantser.
Well, I think there are three different kinds of people, how they sell too. Like I was a storyteller and I had to learn to be a writer. And once my writing ability was par with my storytelling ability, that's when I sold my first book. My friend Linda Lale Miller is a natural born writer, but she gets so caught up in the beauty of the sentences that she makes. She had to learn to tell a story. And once her storytelling ability matched her writing ability, she sold. And then there are those that are so talented, they actually possess both talents. And they almost always sell quickly. I call them, I say that they just haven't suffered enough, because they're almost always one book wonders, because they don't have that foundation that builds a writer. They don't know what they did right, and there's all this pressure put upon them to create another book that was as successful as the first one, and they're lost.
Isn't that interesting? That's a really good analysis. Thank you.
I read that Harlequin turned you down when you were starting. Is that correct?
Yes, they did. They said they had their American writer, who was Janet Daly at the time. And it was through Simon & Schuster that opened the door. And that changed publishing forever. It opened the door for women writers. If you look at all of the best-selling women authors that are in my age bracket, you'll find every single one of us walked through that door at Silhouette or another publishers that jumped on the bandwagon.
Oh, wow.
For women, yes. It was very closed in New York.
That's really interesting too. Thank you.
Jennifer, you better start writing for Silhouette.
I've already taken note. Thank you. Debbie, just since Jacques has thrown that toward me, does that remain an important portal for women writers, or has it become so much easier for women to get published than it was when you started out?
Oh my goodness, we dominate the bestseller list now. We dominate the bestseller list, and there's so many more opportunities for writers now than ever before, especially with just like we were talking about Jana DeLong. And, she's just online only, an ebook author, fabulously talented. I think you're having her on soon. And so there's so many more opportunities for writers than ever before. The door is wide open.
Yeah, I think like E.L. James, when you look at, the phenomenon of 50 Shades, it started out as Twilight fan fiction online, work self-published, and she just, became a phenomenon. And since you mentioned it, I'm going to just put in a plug. On Thursday, we're presenting Jana DeLeon, who writes cozy mysteries that are set in the swamps of Louisiana.
And they're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful.
They're hilarious. They're really hilarious. And so
I have never laughed so hard when she talks about the Geritol Mafia.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like the Golden Girls meet Dirty Harry or something. So Thursday at 7:30, we're going to be doing Merry Swampness with Jana. So if you all want to come back, we'll be happy to have you.
You won't be disappointed. The books are wonderful.
Yeah, and she's a fan of yours, so I'm gonna be sure to let her know. Jennifer, any other questions that you?
There are a couple more, and I just remind people that there are links in the chat to purchase. Oh, Jacques just reposted the links for Debbie's books, and I will post a link for Thursday night's program as soon as this is over, and you guys can come back and check out that.
And we want to remind you that the books are signed. Or have Debbie's autographs with them, and also your purchase benefits the Mark Twain House and Museum.
Thank you for both of those reminders, Jacques.
My pleasure.
Do you ever get away in order, Debbie, this is for Debbie, do you ever get away in order to write a certain book, somewhere tropical, into the mountains or something like that? That's from Eve again.
I don't. I get away to get away. I know that several of my friends will rent a hotel room to get away and just, plow through a book, but I've never done that. I'm usually pretty disciplined in my writing. I'm rarely behind.
Wow, that's admirable. How about you, Jacques? I know you
I have to go on vacation to write. I wrote one of my plays when I was in Anguilla. It makes my husband crazy because he wants to go out and do stuff. And I'm like hiding in the hotel room. But it's so hard when you're spending your work day all day in front of the computer to then feel like I can log off and then log back in and suddenly I'm a playwright. It's just very easy for me. I think because I don't do my writing full time the way that Debbie does, that it becomes harder to toggle between the two jobs.
Right.
So writing's a vacation for me.
There's, I think, only one more question here, and this is from Sue Peterson wanting to know, Debbie, do you ever plan to bring back Shirley, Goodness, and Mercy?
It's really hard for an author to go back to a series. Yes, I probably will. I did a short story in the Welcome Home free issue this month called Grandma and the Angels. So I think they'll probably make more appearances in short stories than they will long books.
Okay. I hope that makes Sue Peterson happy. And there is one more question from Gina Dion, and this is, I think, everybody's question. I hope I didn't miss the answer. Are there plans for Hallmark to make a movie version of Jingle All the Way?
Well, it certainly would make a perfect movie, but not that I know of. Who knows? Not yet. Let's put it like that. Not yet.
What if we start a groundswell movement and petition Hallmark to do this?
All the better.
Well, I think we did answer all the audience questions. Thank you, folks, for posing such good questions. And I will, as I said, put some more information in the chat. You can come back to the chat. The chat remains live in perpetuity. So you can watch this program over again. It's being recorded. And once you've taken part and registered for it, you can watch it anytime you like. And if you've made friends in the chat, you can continue to chat away there. Debbie, I want to say you were such a great sport about the Mad Libs, and that was a lot of fun, and just so delightful to have you back, as Jacques reminded us that you have done with us before, and we hope that you'll come back in person sometime soon when it's safe to do so, and we can do this in person and online.
I'd love to.
Sounds good. And Jacques Lamarre, thank you so much for your excellent job and for the Christmas sweater.
I didn't share with everyone how hideous my sweater is, but thank you all. And thank you, Debbie, and have a wonderful time with your family.
Oh, yes. And Merry Christmas, everyone.
Oh, Merry Christmas. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.